Let us pray. On this day of Convocation, we turn to you, gracious Creator of us all. We turn to you with thanks for the opportunities that lie ahead, opportunities to explore mysteries to which we are drawn, but which we do not fully understand, mysteries in ancient scriptures, mysteries in universes aborning, mysteries welling up within our own hearts. We turn to you with a plea for courage to avoid easy paths and to choose the challenging places where the timid may fear to tread, but where our presence can make the greatest difference for their sisters and brothers in need. We pray for a full measure of your compassion, that our goals in study and career may be lifted above personal agendas and may be drawn into the healing and restoration of your delicate creation. We turn to you finally with a prayer for reconciliation among contending clans and nations, and we ask that in the academic year that lies before us, reconciliation may begin in our classrooms and in our daily lives. Thanks and praise and glory be to you, O gracious Creator of us all. Amen.
It's my great pleasure to welcome everyone here at the beginning of a new academic year, the 193rd for the Harvard Divinity School, and one that we are very optimistic about and look forward to with a great deal of anticipation. Welcome to all of the new students who are here today. Welcome to new faculty in our ranks. Welcome to all of the guests, friends, and family who are here. We are glad always to have a wider circle with us, and particularly on such an occasion. It is the only convocation held by any faculty today still in the university. And we keep to this tradition so that at least one part of the university can mark that beginning of the academic year in traditional fashion, the way it has been marked in universities for centuries. We'd like to think that that's keeping the flame burning in some sense. As a beginning, it is really only that. It's really a preliminary. The real beginning is this week in the classroom. And that's obviously where most of us are focusing our energies and attentions. But I think at a time like this, at the beginning of our work, it is always good to pause, to have a bit of time for reflection. In our case, we always listen to the remarks of one of our number that gives us food for thought in addition to the work that we are facing. And I would only, in closing, turn and quote from that great American philosopher theologian Henry Ford, who said that coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. And I think that we will find that again. I hope that that will be what we will find again for all of us this year in our renewed academic endeavors. Thank you.
First reading for our reflection is from A New Climate for Theology, God, the World, and Global Warming by Sally McFaig. Most people in Western democracies think that they are basically and centrally individuals. They do not, first of all, think of themselves as members of a community, not of a human community, and even less of a natural community, a planetary community. This individualistic outlook encourages people to work hard and to compete for scarce resources, and thus tend to see others, both humans and other life forms, as resources or objects toward one's goal of self-sufficiency. This model of human life is deeply ingrained in our sensibility and functions at every level, in our families, at school, at the office, in sports, and in politics. People are rewarded for individual achievement without regard to its implication for other people or for nature. Our most basic stance involves standing on our own 2 feet and viewing others and the world from that vantage point. But what if this view is false? What if it should turn out that we are not our own, but belong, body and soul, to others, other people and other life forms? What if we discover that individualistic anthropology is a lie? That ecological anthropology is truer to the way things are? What if the consequences of climate change are telling us that we are living in ways that our planet will not allow? What if we begin to realize that the community model, the model in which human individuals must fit into a just, sustainable planet, is a necessity? What if we wake up from our dream of individualistic glory, regardless of the consequences to others, and realize that we will all make it together, or none of us will make it? What if a very different view of who we think we are should become common, become conventional, become natural? This concept is emerging as a possibility from many places, and its growth worldwide may be central to our ability to respond to the crisis of our time, global warming. Global warming is not just another important issue that human beings need to deal with. Rather, it is the demand that we live differently. We cannot solve it, deal with it, given our current anthropology. It is not simply an issue of management. Rather, it demands a paradigm shift in who we think we are. This is certainly not the only thing that is needed, but it is a central one. For without it, we cannot expect ourselves or others to undertake the radical behavioral change that is necessary to address our planetary crisis. We have arrived at this knowledge at the same time we realize that we are not separate, static individuals who choose to be in relationship with other life forms whenever we feel like it. Rather, we now know that we belong, from the cells of our bodies to the finest creations of our minds, to the intricate changing cosmos that gave us birth and that sustains us. We are not our own, as Wallace Stevens puts it. Nothing is itself taken alone. Things are because of interrelations and connections, interconnections. It is this combination of responsibility and interdependence that is the key to contemporary scientific anthropology. We are responsible. We can make choices. We can decide to live in one way or another. But we are not just responsible for our individual selves. Rather, we know that who we are is interconnected with all other living things. The vastness of the universe, which you contemplate in the starlit night, becomes even vaster when you look at yourself as part of this universe, and you become to realize that it is you who are this universe, the universe contemplating itself, a universe which, in addition to its spatial temporal dimensions, acquires a new dimension of even greater magnitude within your own self. We are the consciousness and the conscience of the cosmos, and the incarnation of the Word in a human body signifies its incarnation in the entire cosmos. The entire cosmos is in communion. The calcium in our bodies is the same calcium that we find in the sea, and which we have drawn from the sea, for our life itself has had its origin in the sea. And both the calcium of our body and that of the sea derive from heaven, from the calcium that is contained in the stars, and that floats in the interstellar oceans, and from which have sprung the stars. For the stars are a condensation of the brittle matter of the interstellar spaces, and derive from them as our body derives from the sea. Actually, there are no interstellar and intergalactic empty spaces, since the entire cosmos is one single material mass, more or less rarefied or condensed. And thus, the entire cosmos forms one single body. The constitutive elements of meteorites that have split off from distant stars are the same elements which are found in our planet, in our bodies, and in the interstellar spaces. Thus we are made of the matter of the stars. Or, to say it more accurately, the entire cosmos is made of our flesh. In our body commune all living animals, all fossils, all metals, and all other elements of the universe. The sculptor who sculpts in stone consists of the same matter that is in the stone. He is, she is, as it were, the consciousness and the conscience of the stone. The stone become artist, besouled matter.
The next reading is by Tenzin Gyatso, the 14th Dalai Lama. Peace and survival of life on earth as we know it are threatened by human activities which lack a commitment to humanitarian values. Destruction of nature and natural resources results from ignorance, greed, and lack of respect for the earth's living things. This lack of respect extends even to Earth's human descendants, the future generations who will inherit a vastly degraded planet if world peace does not become a reality and destruction of the natural environment continues at the present pace. Our ancestors viewed the earth as rich and bountiful, which it is. Many people in the past also saw nature as inexhaustibly sustainable, which we now know is the case only if we care for it. It is not difficult to forgive destruction in the past which resulted from ignorance. Today, however, we have access to more information, and it is essential that we re-examine ethically what we have inherited, what we are responsible for, and what we will pass on to coming generations. Clearly, this is a pivotal generation. Global communication is possible, yet confrontations more often than meaningful dialogues for peace take place. Our marvels of science and technology are matched, if not outweighed, by many current tragedies, including human starvation in some parts of the world and extinction of other life forms. Exploration of outer space takes place at the same time as the Earth's own oceans, seas, and freshwater areas grow increasingly polluted, and their life forms are still largely unknown or misunderstood. Many of the Earth's habitats, animals, plants, insects, and even microorganisms that we know as rare may not be known at all by future generations. We have the capability and the responsibility. We must act before it is too late.
A reading from Being Peace by Venerable Thich Nhat Hanh. Just as a piece of paper is the fruit, the combination of many elements that can be called non-paper elements, the individual is made of non-individual elements. If you are a poet, you will see that there is a cloud floating in this piece of paper. Without a cloud, there will be no water. Without water, the trees cannot grow. And without trees, you cannot make paper. So the cloud is in here. The existence of this page is dependent on the existence of a cloud. Paper and cloud are so close. Let us think of other things, like sunshine. Sunshine is very important because the forest cannot grow without sunshine, and we humans cannot grow without sunshine. So the logger needs sunshine in order to cut the tree, and the tree needs sunshine in order to be a tree. Therefore, we can see sunshine in this sheet of paper. And if you look more deeply, with the eyes of a bodhisattva, the eyes of one who is awake, you can see not just the cloud and the sunshine in it, but everything is here. The wheat that became bread for the logger to eat, the logger's father, everything is in this sheet of paper. The Avatamsaka Sutra tells us that you cannot point to one thing that does not have a relationship with this piece of paper. So we say a sheet of paper is made of non-paper elements. A cloud is a non-paper element. The forest is a non-paper element. Sunshine is a non-paper element. The piece of paper is made of these non-paper elements to the extent that if we remove the non-paper elements to their source, the cloud to the sky, the sunshine to the sun, the forester to his father, the paper is empty. Empty of what? Empty of a separate self. It is made of all of the non-self elements, the non-paper elements. And if these non-paper elements are taken out, the sheet of paper is truly empty, empty of an independent self. Empty in this sense means that the sheet of paper is full of everything, the entire cosmos. The presence of this tiny sheet of paper proves the presence of the whole cosmos.
Good afternoon, friends, and welcome to this very important occasion in the school year for Harvard Divinity School. It's my great pleasure to introduce to you our speaker for today, a man who is known around the world for his superb scholarship in comparative religion in general and Theravada Buddhism in particular. Donald K. Swearer is the Distinguished Visiting Professor of Buddhist Studies at Harvard Divinity School and is currently serving as Director for the Center of the Study of World Religions. You perhaps have read about Don in the little flyer that came out. His accomplishments are many. Let me just highlight a few of them for you here. Don received his PhD from Princeton University, and he taught for many years at Swarthmore College, where he was the Charles and Harriet Cox McDowell Professor of Religion. He's had numerous visiting professorships. One of the most recent was in 2001 to 2004 at Payap University in Chiang Mai, Thailand. He has served in some editorial capacity for at least 12 journals on Buddhism, religious ethics, and religious studies. He's held a number of very prestigious fellowships, including those from the National Endowment for the Humanities, the Fulbright Program, and the Guggenheim Foundation. I did a quick count of the number of books that he has written, and it comes out to somewhere over 32. I won't list all of those for you, but I thought you would be interested in the titles of some of the most recent. Becoming the Buddha, the Ritual of Image Construction in Thailand. Sacred Mountains in northern Thailand and their Legends. Thinking Globally, Buddhist Christian Theology and Ethics. The Buddhist World of Southeast Asia, Ethics, Value, and the Environment. And I'm told that among his works in progress are Interpreting Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, The Faces of the Mountain, Sacred Mountain Traditions, a theme that we've heard echoed here today. Christian Identity in Buddhist Thailand, and my personal favorite, The Flower Garden Monastery Chronicle of the Founding of Buddhism. And with all of that, as Don Swearer's students and friends know, he remains a man of humility and deep generosity of spirit. I don't want to make excessive claims for Don, but those of us who have watched his career over the years know that he has become not only an internationally acclaimed interpreter of Buddhism, but a man himself of both wisdom and compassion. The title of this afternoon's talk is An Ecology of Human Flourishing. May I introduce to you a great teacher, a remarkable scholar, and a wonderful colleague, Professor Don Swearer.
Dean Graham, Dean Smith, distinguished faculty and staff, honored guests and friends, entering and returning students. I'm honored, very honored, to speak at the 193rd Convocation of the Harvard Divinity School. I expect that 50 or 100 years ago, convocation addresses were probably more on the order of a sermon, but in recent years they have been seen primarily as a lecture. My remarks to you this afternoon aren't quite a sermon, nor are they quite a lecture. I would refer to them, I think, as a hortatory talk. In 1975, 4 of my colleagues at Swarthmore College, where I was teaching at the time, a classicist, an anthropologist, a physicist and a biologist, and myself, dreamed up the idea of teaching a foolishly ambitious course that we called the Patterns of Explanation. The idea for the course came from our reading of Thomas Kuhn's provocative 1962 book, The Structure of Scientific Revolutions, leavened a bit by Anthony Wallace's work on revitalization movements and Karl Jasper's notion of Ochsenzeit, or axial age. While a graduate student in physics at Harvard, Kuhn became enamored with the history of science and was lured away from theoretical physics into a distinguished academic career in the philosophy and history of science at Harvard, Berkeley, Princeton, and MIT. Central to Kuhn's project was, first of all, the concept of paradigm, which he defined as universally recognized scientific achievements that for a time provide model problems and solutions to a community of practitioners. In particular, Kuhn addressed the nature of paradigm shift, or revolutions, in which an older epistemological paradigm is replaced in whole or in part by a new one. New paradigms emerge when the old ones encounter an accumulation of anomalies that a widely accepted paradigm can no longer explain, thereby creating an epistemological crisis. Kuhn included in his examples the transition from a Ptolemaic cosmology to a Copernican one, from the worldview of Newtonian physics to Einsteinian relativity, and from Lamarckianism to Darwin's theory of natural selection. Although Kuhn's book was about paradigm shifts in science, he did find an analogy in political revolutions in which a crisis attenuates the role of political institutions. In increasing numbers, contends Kuhn, individuals become estranged from political life and behave more and more eccentrically within it. Then, as the crisis deepens, many of these individuals commit themselves to some concrete new paradigm for the reconstruction of society in a new institutional framework. Echoing Kuhn's claim, Robert Bellah opened his keynote address last month at the Max Weber Center for Advanced Cultural and Social Studies in Erfurt, Germany, with these remarks. What has become clear to me in recent years is that the old paradigm, which used to be assumed, is being replaced in popular culture by visions of disaster and ecological catastrophe. Never before have criticisms of and calls for alternatives to the existing order seemed so very urgent. Kuhn's paradigm model, I think, has little traction in today's post-structuralist, post-modernist academic ethos. And this afternoon I have, you will be happy to hear, no intention of reminiscing about the successes and failures of the Pattern of Explanation course that my colleagues and I had the temerity to teach once, but the wisdom never to repeat. However, I do want to borrow from Kuhnian terminology to argue for a paradigm shift for the 21st century that I'm calling an ecology of human flourishing. Ecology of human flourishing is really an odd phrase, for it juxtaposes the term ecology, whose main provenance is biological science, with human flourishing, which derives from the terminology of virtue ethics. Ecology, however, is often used rather loosely not in the specific biological terms of the relations between living organisms and their environment, but referring in a much broader sense to the interdependent and interrelational nature of all things. Not only as in a biological family or household, hearkening back to its Greek root oikos, or house, but rather an expansive derivative of the term ecumenical that includes both the natural and the human worlds. The causal import of such a worldview is reflected in the 1975 National Academy of Sciences report that our world is a whole in which any action influencing a single part of the system can be expected to have an effect on all other parts of the system. I'm using the term ecology, then, in this broad sense, and when coupled with human flourishing, the phrase incorporates both a worldview and an ethic, or, if you will, a worldview and a lifestyle. An ecology of human flourishing, then, is an understanding of the world as organically interrelated and interdependent, and a way of being and acting in the world informed and motivated by such a worldview. E.O. Wilson, among others in the sciences, social sciences, and humanities, writes specifically about the human dependence on nature, not from a utilitarian point of view, but from the perspective of what it means to be fully human. Apprehensive of the danger that computer-based information technology, that it might foster the belief that the cocoons of urban and suburban material life are sufficient for human fulfillment, Wilson argues that human nature is deeper and broader than the artifactual contrivance of any existing culture. The spiritual roots of Homo sapiens extend deep into the natural world. We will not reach our full potential, Wilson contends, without understanding the origin and hence the meaning of the aesthetic and religious qualities that make us ineffably human. The expression, an ecology of human flourishing, was initially inspired by my friendship with the Thai monk Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, a major figure in contemporary Thai Buddhism, and his writings on the environment. In poetic prose, reminiscent of this afternoon's reading from Ernesto Cardinal, Buddhadasa writes, "The entire cosmos is a cooperative. The sun, the moon, the stars live together as a cooperative. The same is true for humans and animals, trees, and the earth. When we realize that the world is a mutual, interdependent, cooperative enterprise, then we can build a noble environment. If our lives are not based on this truth, then we shall perish." Buddhadasa founded a forest monastery in southern Thailand in the 1930s, calling it Suan Mo, the Garden of Empowering Liberation. Like E.O. Wilson, for whom the spiritual roots of Homo sapiens lie in the natural world, Buddhadasa valued Suan Mok's natural setting as a place where Homo sapiens might, in Wilson's language, become more ineffably human. The deep sense of calm, writes Buddhadasa, that nature provides through separation from the stress that plagues us in the day-to-day world protects our heart and our mind. The lessons nature teaches us leads to a new birth beyond the suffering caused by our acquisitive self-preoccupation. Buddhadasa intended the Garden of Empowering Liberation not as an escape or a retreat from the world, but as a place where all life forms, humans, animals, and plants, might live as a cooperative microcosm of the larger ecosystem and as a community where humans might develop an ecological ethic based on the values of mindfulness, moderation, simplicity, and non-acquisitiveness. Buddhadasa firmly believed that technology and government alone cannot solve the eco-crisis, but that it requires a transformation of values and lifestyle. My work on Buddhadasa's environmental writings was occasioned by a conference on Buddhism and ecology organized at the Center of World Religions in 1996. It was the first of several conferences on religion and ecology held at the CSWR that led to the founding of the Forum on Religion and Ecology and to the emerging field of religion and ecology studies. The papers published from these conferences encompass a variety of topics. Some are critical of the religion's historical record regarding the environment, but the majority interrogate religious traditions as a possible resource for the development of an environmental ethic. Mary Evelyn Tucker, the co-founder of the Forum, optimistically sees the world's religions entering an ecological phase, a recentering of the human within the myriad species with whom we share the planet, in recognition that human flourishing is inextricably linked to the flourishing of the entire biotic community and the extension of care and compassion toward what she terms the great fecundity of life. There is, of course, nothing unique about holistic worldviews that stress the interconnectedness of all life forms, whether grounded in a transcendent reality or not. In her book, The Great Transformation, Karen Armstrong, following Karl Jaspers, notes that the actual sages who propounded the great world religions and philosophies between 1600 and 220 BCE advocated an ethic of compassion based on such a paradigm. Her normative concern, however, aims more at the present than the past. She concludes her book with these words: "Today we are living in a tragic world where, as the Greeks knew, there can be no simple answers. The genre of tragedy demands that we learn to see things from other people's points of view. If religion is to bring light to our broken world, we need, as Mencius suggested, to go in search of the lost heart, the spirit of compassion that lies at the core of all of our traditions." Tucker and Armstrong echo the sentiments embodied in this afternoon's readings by Thich Nhat Hanh, the Dalai Lama, Ernesto Cardinal, and Sally McFay. Taken together, they underscore the twin pillars of an ecology of human flourishing: the world as organically interrelated and interdependent, and as a way of being and acting in the world informed and motivated by such a worldview. The presence of this tiny sheet of paper proves the presence of the whole cosmos. Nhat Hanh. We are the consciousness and the conscience of the cosmos. Cardinal. This is a pivotal generation. The peace and survival of life as we know it are threatened. The Dalai Lama. Global warming is the demand that we live differently. McFaig. An Ecology of Human Flourishing joins company with McFaig's ecological anthropology. For McFaig, ecological anthropology represents, as you heard in the readings, a paradigm shift from individualistic anthropology that she sees as the dominant model of Western democratic capitalistic societies. Most people in Western democracies, argues McFaig, and as you heard read, think they are basically individuals. They don't, first of all, think of themselves as members of a community, especially a natural or planetary community. This individualistic outlook encourages people to work hard and compete for scarce resources, and thus tend to see others, both humans and other life forms, as resources or objects towards one's goal of self-sufficiency. For McFaig, the crisis of global warming is linked to this canopy of individualism. The creation of a just and a sustainable planet, she argues, calls for a revolutionary challenge to the paradigm of individualism that has influenced the unconscious and semi-conscious assumption of three pillars of American society: government, economics, and religion. McFaig identifies this new paradigm as communitarian, a model that emphasizes our interrelationship and interdependence with other human beings and other life forms. She calls for Christians to be open to an ecological Catholicity, a cruciform living in solidarity with those billion or so human beings who live on $1 a day or less, animals facing the loss of habitat, and a deteriorating planet dying from excessive energy use. Her paradigm calls for a shift from the neoclassic economic model that rules the global marketplace to an ecological or planetary model based on the assumption that we need one another not only to survive, but to flourish. Like McFaig's paradigm, an ecology of human flourishing highlights communality and a lifestyle of enoughness. Communality, in my paradigm, has a planetary reach that includes but isn't limited to human community. As those of you who are entering HDS will soon discover, community is one of the buzzwords here. We talk a lot about community, the need for community, how to create community, community spaces, the Center for the Study of World Religions as a community, and so on and so on. Robert Putnam, professor of public policy at Harvard and former dean of the Kennedy School, who has focused his research on civic community, has made the phrase bowling alone a symbol of the loss of community or social capital. For Bishop Desmond Tutu, community defines our very humanity. We are made for fellowship, observes Tutu, because only in a vulnerable set of relationships are we able to recognize that our humanity is bound up with the humanity of others. Bishop Tutu's communitarian theology, based on the African concept or term Ubuntu, humanity, inspired the title of the 2008 documentary film, I Am Because We Are. The film is about the millions of orphans in the African country of Malawi who have lost parents and siblings to HIV and AIDS. The film, much to my surprise, but as most of you who are younger than I am probably know, was produced by Madonna. Human flourishing, in my paradigm, extends this sense of I am because we are to the community of nature as well. An ecology of human flourishing also calls for a lifestyle of moderation or enoughness. There's nothing new about the value of enoughness. Thrift, moderation, avoiding excess are classic virtues. The Buddhist tradition identifies itself as a middle way between the extremes of excessive indulgence and hair-shirt self-denial. And today, even David Brooks, in a recent New York Times editorial, takes on what he refers to as our excessive financial decadence. The philosophy of enoughness, however, speaks to more than personal lifestyle or how we do or do not use our money. Several of Bill McKibben's systemic books can be framed within the context of the principle of enoughness. The end of nature is about the excessive release of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere that leads to global warming. The age of missing information is about the flood of electronic information, especially through television, that endangers a deeper contemplative understanding of who we are and the world we inhabit. And enough, staying human in an engineered age, queries the limits and potential excesses of genetic engineering, robotics, and nanotechnology for what it means to be human. In The Paradox of Choice, my friend and former colleague, the social psychologist Barry Schwartz, critiques the excesses of the consumer paradigm that produces an overwhelmingly time-consuming and stultifying excess of choice to the detriment of human flourishing. Scanning the shelves of my local supermarket recently, reports Schwartz, I found 85 different varieties and brands of crackers. As I read the packages, I discovered that some brands had sodium, others didn't. Some were fat-free, others weren't. They came in big boxes and small boxes. They came in normal sizes and big and bite sizes. And next to the crackers were 285 varieties of cookies. Among chocolate chip cookies, there were 21 local options. Among goldfish, there were 20 different varieties to choose from, and so on and so on. From the supermarket, I stepped into my local consumer electronics store, and here I discovered 45 different car stereo systems with 50 different speaker sets, 42 different computers, 27 different printers, 110 different televisions, and so on and so on. Schwartz's point is obvious, that the excesses of choice can not only be inordinately time-consuming, but mind-numbing and immobilizing. In other words, excessive choice undermines rather than promotes human flourishing. The principle of enoughness embraces our personal lifestyle, whether and what we watch on television to our shopping habits, but also the ways we relate to and interact with others and with the natural environment. Maintaining a sustainable planet is a principle of enoughness. Living simply that other people may simply live is a practical expression of the principle of distributive eco-justice, but equally an expression of the virtues of care and compassion that flow from Ubuntu. I am because all of us are. These virtues, as Mencius recognized, are constitutive of what it means to be human. Similarly, for Arthur Kleinman, who holds professorships at Harvard in anthropology and the medical school and who directs the Asia Center, caregiving is essential to human flourishing. It's an expression of our ethical and religious aspiration to remake the world in the midst of the contradictions, injustices, and problematic of our daily lives. For me, Thich Nhat Hanh's poem, Call Me By My True Names, provides a particularly compelling and moving example of the connection between the worldview and the ethic of an ecology of human flourishing. It's a poem that he wrote after receiving a letter about a 12-year-old girl on a small refugee boat fleeing Vietnam after the war, who was raped by a sea pirate and then leapt into the ocean and drowned herself. Do not say that I'll depart tomorrow, because even today I still arrive. Look deeply. I arrive in every second to be a bud on a spring branch, to be a tiny bird with wings still fragile, learning to sing in my new nest, to be a caterpillar in the heart of a flower, to be a jewel hiding itself in a stone. I still arrive in order to cry and to laugh, in order to fear and to hope. The rhythm of my heart is the birth and the death of all that are alive. I am the mayfly metamorphosing on the surface of the river, and I am the bird which, when spring comes, arrives in time to eat the mayfly. I am the frog swimming happily in the clear water of a pond, and I am the grass snake who, approaching in silence, feeds itself on the frog. I am the child in Uganda, all skin and bones, my leg as thin as bamboo sticks. And I am the arms merchant selling deadly weapons to Uganda. I am the 12-year-old girl refugee on a small boat who throws herself into the ocean after being raped by a sea pirate. And I am the pirate, my heart not yet capable of seeing and loving. My joy is like spring, so warm it makes flowers bloom in all walks of life. My pain is like a river of tears, so full it fills up the four oceans. Please call me by my true names, so I can hear all my cries and my laughs at once, so I can see that my joy and my pain are one. Please call me by my true name, so I can wake up, and so the door of my heart can be left open, the door of compassion. Many of us, I think, share Robert Bella's sensibility that alternatives to the existing order have never seemed so urgent. Or in Thomas Kuhn's scheme of analysis, that we have arrived at a crisis moment in human history when an increasing number of us are prepared to commit ourselves to a new paradigm. The worldview and the ethic of an ecology of human flourishing, so movingly and compellingly expressed by Thich Nhat Hanh, Ernesto Cardinal, His Holiness the Dalai Lama, and Sally McFaig, are not new. But it would be new revolutionarily new if, in the future, an ecology of human flourishing were to become our dominant paradigm and become the operative episteme of this century. We realize that we are not separate, static individuals who merely choose to be in relation with other life forms when we feel like it. Rather, we now know that we belong, from the cells of our body to the finest creations of our minds, to the intricate, changing cosmos that gave us birth and sustains us. Thank you.
I'd like to thank my colleague Don Swearer for that fine address, which I think sends us very well into a new year. I'd also like to take this moment at the time of dismissal from this convocation to invite everyone who is here to join us back at the side, or really in the front yard, I guess you would say, of Andover Hall, where under the tent and in the yard, I think we have refreshments prepared for us, a resplendent reception that I hope you will come and join us in. I would note that I hope you will pass through the former backyard and parking lot at Divinity School, which now is a beautiful green quadrangle, and where I think we will probably in the future always gather once the grass has had time to survive its new planting. And so you're probably, if you come back with us, are probably witnessing the last tent on the former front lawn, because the new lawn will probably become our front lawn in the future. Indeed, do come and join us as soon as we close this convocation with a benediction that I'm going to ask Elizabeth Smith-Levitt, MDiv 3, and the leader of our Life Together Student Leadership and Coordinating Group to give to us. Elizabeth?
In the words of Ernesto Cardenal, read by Professor King and illuminated so beautifully by Professor Swearer, he tells us that we are the consciousness and the conscience of the cosmos. We are the sculptor who is of the same matter as the stone become artist, be sold matter. And I would invite you to go now, being be sold matter into the communion that is the cosmos. Amen.